check out my really awesome bread slicing.
Nice. Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I am Will.
I am Adam.
And I am Norm.
Gentlemen,
I am number 4.
I feel like on that last episode, we blew through everything we have to talk about for about 6 months. So,
But it's good. It's a nice meaty post-Comic-Con wrap-up last week that we had. I've still...
or 5 minutes ago for
I
us,
know.
as the case
but
may
I
be.
still feel like I'm recovering from Comic-Con, frankly.
I still have the cough.
Ooh, and the sneezes.
Oh,
me.
sorry,
And the hiccups.
sorry.
You know what? Oh, look at this. Can I say I have become a big fan of the camping towel?
Oh, yeah, the chamois?
The chamois. So these are made, you can buy these at REI, which, by the way, REI, you know, they do their, if you're a member of REI, they do the dividends. So I think it's fairly heavy-duty dividend you get for making purchases there.
I never understood how that worked, but I'm sure somebody will tell us now.
At any rate, they wrote to me recently, because I buy there professionally and personally.
Yeah.
They wrote to me recently, and they were like, you've got $350 in your REI
Nice.
account. Come down and spend it.
Ooh.
And I was like, well done, sir. I'll be right over.
Done, yes.
And so this is a camp towel made by Pack Towel. One of its advantages is you can get it completely soaking wet with water and then get 90% of the water out by squeezing it. So it dries very quickly. I now always have one of these on Mythbusters sets because we were up in Oregon last week filming in 90, 95 degree heat, and it was brutal. So have this to daub my brow.
Well, but, okay, so... The thing I love about them is they have hooks. They either
Yes.
have a grommet or a loop or something.
Yep.
Because the thing I always used to do when I was backpacking is you'd use it in the morning, wash your face, whatever.
Right.
Dry out your dishes, and then hang it off the back of your pack so it'd
Yes.
dry out during the day. It's incredibly useful to have a towel that you can hook to things.
Agreed.
Because then it's really, you have to really work at it to lose it.
Yes.
Because my problem is I go through microfibers to wipe my glasses like nothing you've ever seen. And you can wipe your glasses with those without destroying them.
Absolutely. So I'm a big fan of camp towels.
Camp towels I like camping stuff in general.
I am about to do a little camping.
Really?
This will air after I'm already gone.
Okay.
But we are filming an episode down in the desert. I won't get more specific than that. And I am going to drive down. I got the option of, they give me the option to fly because it's less energy for me. But frankly, on a point-to-point basis, flying would take me about 5.5 hours to get from my house to the location in the desert, whereas driving will take me 6.5.
Yeah, and then you'll have a car.
Well, so I'm going to take my Land Cruiser and I'm going to do some camping.
Nice.
Because the place where we're filming is all surrounded by BLM land. All I got to do is find a nearby fire road and I can drive up there and camp to my heart's content.
So let me ask a question. This is something you guys often go to fairly remote places, and I know that like I own places you go regularly. You have like accommodations. I assume that you're
Yes.
accustomed to, so you stay in the same hotels or
Yeah.
whatever. But when you go someplace that there's not hotels convenient, do you guys actually like sack out in the middle of the desert, or you
No.
just drive a few hours?
it's usually, I believe that we're staying about an hour from the location, which is always the way when we're filming in the desert.
Okay.
So it's every morning you've got an hour drive ahead of you, which can be brutal because in the desert we have often long days. So, when we did Rocket Car, we were leaving the hotel at 5:30 in the morning to get on location and have coffee by the time the sun came up at 7.
So if the sun was up, you were working basically.
Yeah. And we're going until you sort of feel the whole crew's energy drop, and then it's time to send everyone home. It's usually exactly 12-hour turnaround. So we're getting home at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and then 12 hours later, we're right back out on.
It's hard in the sun too.
So this trip's going to be a 6-hour drive?
6 plus, give or
I
take.
enjoy a 6-hour drive.
That's a good
That
distance.
Is a great length
Yeah.
of time to drive.
Well, it is also happens to be roughly the amount of time it takes to drive from here to Los Angeles.
Yep.
I have done that trip. I've done it on 101. I've done it on 5. I've done the farther eastern route. Is it 99 that heads all the way down?
Yeah, 99 goes down the central. It's where we went.
It goes
we went
down
to
the
Mike
east
McMaster's.
side of the Central Valley.
Yeah, it jams into 5 at Bakersfield or something,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
and I have made the drive from San Francisco to LA and back probably 60 times.
Oh wow!
Over the years,
I've
yeah.
done it maybe a half dozen.
Deeply familiar with it. And I love it. My wife and I now in our older age prefer 101 because 101 from here to LA, it's about an hour longer than Route 5, which is a surrealist masterpiece. But 101 is far prettier. Yeah, 5 is if you've never driven Route 5, in the Central Valley. It is literally I think it's 250 miles without a turn or without a bend in the road.
Oh yeah, you can if your car drives straight and true, you can just bungee the wheel up and kick. It's like having a self-driving car.
It is.
I did it a dozen times last year, and it's fantastic.
Wow,
It is.
dozen?
Yes, a dozen times last year, and I know all the exits, and make the same joke every time. Up, coming in Coalinga.
Yes.
Turn off the air conditioning.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
so
yeah.
we were the second time I drove through Coalinga. I'm in a MythBusters van with a crew, and somebody says, "Who farted?" So what we're pointing out is that Coalinga
It's a
is
fart
one of the
joke.
largest cattle farms in California.
Harris Ranch. Yeah.
Harris Ranch. It is just thousands of acres of nothing but cows
And lots of poop.
and lots of poop, and it smells horrendous for miles. So we're driving and our windows are closed because the AC's on, and one of our crew goes, "Who farted?" And we do the universal crew response to a fart, which is to roll down the windows, which made it 100 times worse.
Oh no!
That's a mistake.
Oh no!
But
It's
we're
max
laughing-
AC.
We're
It's
laughing
always max.
hysterically because that was the opposite of what we thought was going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
We thought we were getting rid of the smell.
Oh, no.
So we're driving, laughing hysterically.
So the first time I drove by Coalinga was when I moved to California. So my now wife and I moved out in 2000,
Yeah.
and we drove a 14-foot Ryder truck packed with all of our worldly possessions, with our car dangling off the back from Northeast Tennessee to here. It took 3.5 or 4 days. I can't remember, and it was one of those ones where I'd been out here working for a little bit to kind of find, and back then you have to really work to find an apartment here. But
Yeah.
it took me about 3 weeks to find an apartment that was in a price range I could afford that
Yeah.
would actually rent to me with no rental history.
that was during the last boom, right?
It was right before the first bubble.
Yeah.
So I'd been out here for a month. I flew back, packed up the rest of the house, and left the sign out front for the realtor and cleared out, because I owned a house in Tennessee before I moved here. We were driving. As I got off the plane, I was like, "Man, I really don't feel good." I had picked up the flu someplace and had like the cold shivers and all. Not so bad that I couldn't pack, but just enough that I needed to sit down every once in a while. And then as we're driving, Gina it hits her. She's like, because she was pissed at me
Yeah.
for lazing around while packing up the house in the 90 degrees in the middle of summer. and so then I ended up driving 14-hour days, listening to audiobooks on the way out. We got to Coalinga and the air conditioner had crapped out on the car.
no.
So we were like, we could stop and get another truck and swap everything out, but it's only like 5 hours from here. Let's just push through. Terrible, terrible decision.
Yeah.
I don't think that truck was ever right again.
What,
It smelled really bad.
What were your 14 hours? You're covering a lot of mileage
Yeah, so I've done that. I've done the back and forth a couple of times
across the country.
Yeah, when I was
I have never driven across
Really?
the country. No.
I've
I've never had the chance. So
it's so good.
I think I'm going to have a little more time to do such a thing next year. So I'm going to. My wife and I have already blocked out a potential road trip with the kids.
Are you going to go north or south?
We're talking. All of it's possible. We're talking about potentially heading up through some landmarks, the northern route to Chicago, and then heading south and coming back.
That is a fine way to do it, especially in the summer.
You do the exchange of the waters, right? Pacific Ocean, get a cup of,
Oh.
and then dump it in the Atlantic, and then the way back.
That would be cool.
That's
No, I hadn't thought about that. But so yeah, I've never done a cross country trip. You've done it more
So
than
the
once.
first time I did it was in college, and I had a friend who was from Phoenix. So I flew out to hang out at his house in the last 2 weeks of August in Phoenix before we went back to school, and ended up spending 2 weeks by the pool drinking bourbon and turning really dark brown, which is hard to believe when you look at me now. But the night before we were supposed to leave, we both ended up making poor choices and ended up with such crippling hangovers the next morning that we couldn't leave Phoenix. So instead of having 4 days, which is a reasonable amount of time to drive the 2,200 miles or whatever it is from Phoenix to Knoxville, Tennessee, we had 3 days, which meant all of a sudden we went from a stopping twice to stopping not at all.
Right.
And sleeping in the back of the car while the other person's driving.
Oh my gosh.
It is not a good way to
You
experience
just
the
get
country.
so brutalized.
The best way to do it is to take about 2 weeks
Yeah.
for each direction
Each
if
trip,
you can.
yeah.
and just stop whenever you like. You want to have enough time that if you see something that looks even the slightest bit interesting, you can stop.
Well, so my wife and I have taken many road trips. We both love to drive. So a couple of years ago, we took the kids from here to Whistler, BC, and back.
Oh, that's
over
a great
2 weeks,
drive.
2,200 miles in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Or 12 days. It was
Yeah.
great. A few years ago, we took Huxley. This was before we had Maggie. We took Huxley on a drive. God, it was Christmas Day. We left San Francisco on Christmas Day. Headed down to LA, stayed a night at the Chateau Marmont, then headed over to Vegas, played some poker at Caesars, some $1, $2 hold'em.
Okay.
Then headed down to Sedona, then we headed to Utah. We stayed with a friend in Utah. Then we headed down to Sedona, Arizona, which is a beautiful.
Sedona's
town.
great. Yeah.
And then we were in Sedona. It was New Year's. We did New Year's Eve in Sedona. New Year's Day, we wake up. And we had plans. We were going to go hot air ballooning in Sedona, which is beautiful, these red cliffs. And we realized we want to be home. We were home that night.
It's funny.
We made it from Sedona to San Francisco in about 13 hours.
That's
it
a
was
long drive.
850 miles.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was a hell. But New Year's Day, no traffic.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't see a single human on the road.
We right before we launched Tested, when I quit my old job, I had 2 weeks in between, and Gina and I hopped in the car with Chloe Bananas and drove up to Portland. Because Gina had never been to Portland at that point, and I had been a couple of times with work and some other stuff. But we just took 5 days to drive up and stopped along the coast. And
So
anytime we
great.
saw something, we just stopped.
Yes.
And I'd never.
You want to do the coastway. You want to do.
Oh yeah, don't go. Come back on 5.
Actually, when we did the Whistler, we came back through the eastern route, and I must say, it hadn't sunk into me how close the eastern part of Washington and Oregon are to the Mojave Desert. It's all high desert.
Oh yeah.
So we took that route back 5 past Mount Shasta, which is unfathomably gorgeous, and you can see it from about 300 miles away. It would seem.
It's a testament to how beautiful the rest of California is that Mount Shasta is this kind of forgotten thing up in the north end.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. Right now, I just realized I'm driving. When this podcast is airing, I'm driving to Portland right now.
Oh, really? So you had a road trip for Comic-Con.
Yes.
guys took
This is the third year running you've done it, right? Or fourth?
Yeah, I go to LA, and San Diego's just LA plus 2 hours. 2
Right.
hours. And the worst part is driving the truck because you'd only go so fast in the
Right.
truck. And my gut has always been the left lane, but the truck you gotta
You gotta
do the-
live
right
over
lane
there
ride,
in the
man.
right lane.
Yeah, but those trucks are great.
Do you have
it's
a-
spacious?
Now, maybe this isn't the best thing to do, but I do want to point out that when my wife and I drove from Sedona back to San Francisco with no one on the road, Route 40 from Arizona out towards LA,
Like through Winslow?
I can't remember. It is again hundreds of miles of just a straightaway. And at one point, I was able to get the Prius to 114 miles per hour.
Holy
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Coming down those big hills into the. Yeah.
This long, miles long hill. I got my foot on the floor, and it was right after Woz had been pulled over for doing 102 in a Prius on 280 here.
Oh, man.
And I was thinking, so I took a picture of my dashboard going 114, and I sent it to Woz.
That's a
Adam
double
Savage
risk.
is not a role model. Don't try this at home.
There was no one on the road. I'm a professionally trained driver.
Yes.
I am coming down one of those hills in the Ryder. That was what killed the air conditioning, was going through that valley, going through those valleys, because we were coming across in July and middle of August.
Oh, it's so
and
much
it was
strain on your car.
120 degrees,
Yeah.
and it was basically all the AC in that thing could do to keep it at about 80 in the cabin.
Right.
So, what do you guys do to prep for your long car rides? If you have a co-pilot,
Beef
what
jerky?
What are your preparation?
Oreos.
I don't do the sweets because I crash on them.
Oh, I
don't do
ride
sweets
back and
when I
forth
drive.
between
It's like it's the Funyun category, not Funyun specifically.
Funyuns
Those are
and
gross.
Bugles are
But,
pretty strong.
It's the Doritos. It's
Okay.
the barbecued chips. I do mostly water. My wife and I, it's funny, we love driving. We always end up arguing while driving. Not constantly, but we always end up getting in some argument just because driving is exhausting.
It's a bickering situation.
It is a bickering situation.
They're rituals. They're absolutely ritual.
What are
The
yours?
car driving ritual. We pack a cooler of Diet Cokes, but we have ice packs in them.
Yeah.
Because I want ice chilled.
Right.
Nothing better than drive down and having like you have a Ziploc bag filled with
Yeah.
ice
Yeah.
and you have Diet Cokes inside there.
Open your travel bun,
Oh my
put some
God.
cubes
You're reminding
in.
me that it's the one thing I forgot to pick up at REI the other day was a cooler for the cruiser for heading
Yeah.
down to the desert.
Oh, yeah.
You need a cooler. You listen a lot of podcasts, audiobooks on the way to San Diego and back. I listened to all of The Martian because I hadn't listened to
Oh,
audiobooks
yes.
before. Finally listened
Isn't
to
it a
that.
great?
It is a
That
fantastic
is an
audiobook.
absolute pinnacle of audiobook reading, as far as
We like audiobooks here, it turns
Yes.
out.
And then I'm making my way through Ready Player One as well as Seven Eves, and it's.
I've been, I occasionally listen to 99% Invisible. It's a wonderful podcast. I'm planning on doing it down to the desert because well, this is a little spoiler alert. We recently had Jason Reitman do something with Tested, the director of Juno and Men, Women, and Children, and Thank You for Smoking.
He's a big podcast
He's
aficionado.
a huge podcast listener. I mean, he listens to this. He listens to a whole bunch of others that, obviously Serial and This American Life and 99% Invisible, Smarter Every Day. He's a very, very avid ingester of podcasts. And that kind of got me inspired for the road trip to load some up.
Do you do the thing where you listen to like NPR or something and you repeat what they say in your own intonation?
Only if the accents are interesting. Only if the accents. And if Silvia Poggioli is on, I always go Silvia Poggioli. And I am Octavio Postarton from Dakar. I like doing those.
I
When I know Peter Sagal from Wait, Don't
Yeah.
Tell Me. He's a good friend. And there was this drunken night at the White House press correspondence dinner where Peter's and it's when you go to an event with so many crazy famous people, it's overwhelming. So it's really good to have a mission. Like one person you've got to meet. You've got to find them and you want to introduce yourself to them. And for us at that party, it was Linda Wertheimer, who is just, I revere her. And we never did find her, but it was a great mission to have.
it's always important to have a mission.
Anyway, sorry.
No, I was just going to say on the podcast front, I've been listening to a new podcast called Reply All. It's about internet culture.
Yeah.
Very good. Highly recommended.
Reply.
It's from
I've gotten in
Gimlet.
trouble for replying.
Oh
all.
yeah, everybody has. It's the basic. Just listen to the first episode. It's high on my new podcast list. I've been mainlining the 10 or so episodes or whatever there are. But
I'm putting this down. I'm putting this down as a marker. Internet faux pas. That is a podcast episode for us.
okay,
Yes.
Our worst faux pas using the
that-
internet.
you guys are getting
Oh my
some spoilers here.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, after the trip across the country,
Yeah.
something always fails on the trip across the country. So it's an exercise in be prepared. And for us, when we were leaving the Four Corners area of Arizona, the wire between my friend's head unit and his remember when he had CD changers?
Yes.
He had a CD
Oh
changer
my
in the center
God.
console of his car,
Right.
and we had loaded up a bunch of CDs, so we were all ready to go on music. One cassette in the car, the wire burned through and shorted, so no CDs for the remaining
Just listen to
25
Hank Williams
hours.
the whole time.
We listened. Well, first off, radio stations, terrestrial radio stations in the early 2000s in New Mexico and West Texas, mostly consisted of like Navajo singing, which was
All right.
great.
That's
for
great.
like,
That's better than fire and brimstone preaching.
there was that too. And then there's that one radio station from up in Wyoming that everybody gets.
And every now and then you catch NPR.
Yeah.
no NPR. That's not NPR
occasionally,
country.
literally, as you drive on
Oh,
road
yeah, like
trips,
through Oklahoma City or something like that, maybe.
There is actually an app that will tell you the local NPR station based on your location wherever you are.
Well,
great.
that would have been incredibly useful then.
Yeah.
We ended up listening to U2's The Joshua Tree for something like 22 hours on repeat. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if I ever hear that album, if I ever hear Where the Streets Have No Name again,
Oh my
I'm
God.
probably going to be, I'm not okay with that.
My sons have been getting me, introducing me to John Mulaney's comedy. And he has a wonderful story about the best lunch ever. And it was when he was 11 and his buddy and he played What's New Pussycat on a jukebox in a diner endlessly. And he just, it's a 20-minute story of him explaining how What's New Pussycat can unhinge an entire restaurant full of people.
This is like how Patrick Klepek does. He does jukebox trolling. So he'll load up like 15 songs and then play the X-Files theme 3 times in a row. And it seems like it wouldn't be that bad, but it's like 12 minutes long or something really long. Yeah.
But you make a good point. Comedy albums, fantastic.
Yeah.
for road trips.
Oh,
as
yes,
well.
yes, yes.
Comedy podcasts as well.
Right,
Like, that's
right.
when I catch up on Nerdist and like the stand-up podcasts that I don't listen to on.
Yep.
Like, because they're not good to drop in and out of, like when you're on a commute or something.
Now, few people do the cross-country road trips for leisure. I mean, people do it for when
Yeah.
you move and
Well,
stuff
my
like
parents,
that.
when my parents come visit,
I'm
now
saying,
that's what they do.
Right. But in this
a retiree.
generation, it is very
by
fewer
necessity.
people. Exactly. But if you are to do it, and it's something that people like aspire to do now, the drive not just through America, but kind of into America.
Yes.
Like, what do you want to take away from that? Like,
Well, to me, the real trick is the highway infrastructure that the world has built is an amazing testament to technology, but it is also one of the worst ways to see the country. The capitalism has made sure that only a brief jaunt from any highway, you'll find the same strip mall everywhere, and that can get oppressive and soul killing after a while. There's only so many times you can see the same front porch of the Cracker Barrel or
How much Taco Bell can one man really eat?
exactly. So to me, one of the real tricks is making sure you're looking, and this is what smartphones are awesome at, making sure you're finding the unique thing nearby. If you're in the Southwest, go find the really good, use Eater 38 or any one of the food apps to find the great red and green chilies that are out of the way that you might not know
Foursquare.
they're there.
Foursquare is incredibly good for this because people check into the places that are good.
Also find, I found this on tour, antique malls, not just antique stores. Antique store, hit or miss. Antique mall, never not awesome. This is where anywhere from 20 to 100 people, different booths will consign their stuff in a single location. And you get a great cross section. I found the antique malls in El Paso to be vastly different than the antique malls in Connecticut.
Well, and pricing changes dramatically. Like,
Yes.
it's the one thing that hasn't been ruined by eBay and Amazon in terms of some things are cheap in some places. For example, we were in Oregon. My parents are really into pre-colonial,
Right.
like handmade furniture that's usually about 200 years old.
Yeah.
And we found a china cabinet and a corner cabinet in Oregon that would have cost $20,000 or $30,000 a piece, and there they were just like, this is just came across,
Right.
But it was a fraction of the price it would have been on the East Coast where that stuff is really popular.
So you've got to work to go see the cool stuff, and it's worth it. One of the things about California that's really awesome is there are a lot of towns in which the visible part of the town is going to be the Arco and the Shell station and the strip mall, but that almost every town has pride in their history and will have a little historic downtown that you can go to, and you should.
Oh, we've talked about this before on this podcast, but especially in Western towns, there are frequently museums that are like the whatever county historical museum, and it's where stuff goes when they shut down schools, when people die with no heirs, and there's there's a lot of bad stuff. But there's usually at least a couple of things that are just absolutely amazing, and you're never going to see anywhere else when you go to those places.
Totally.
So yeah,
I'm on the road right now. I have the quadcopter in the car.
Oh, you should go check out some. Wait, no, never mind.
Now, I was thinking about taking the Inspire with me to the desert.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other thing that I'm driving the Cruiser, which is an old vehicle, and I have to. My Mrs. Don't Try This was a little pissed. She's
Is it older than your kids?
82? Yeah.
Yeah.
Way older
Way older
than my
than your
kids.
kids.
Way older than some people who work on Mythbusters.
Older than me.
Right.
Oh wow. I remember 1982.
But I have just had it double checked by my, I brought it back out of storage about 3 months ago. I've been driving it as a daily driver. I've been checking the fluids. Everything is tight on this car.
You're going to take
now.
a spare jerry can of gas.
I'm taking a spare jerry can of gas. I hadn't thought about that with the two
diesel.
tanks.
Oh right.
With the two, so we'll do a feature on the Cruiser. It has 2 diesel tanks, and I just found out why.
Because they want to be able to drive really far across the Australian outback.
No, actually, it turns out that in Australia in the early 80s, you could buy diesel fuel, but you could buy 2 kinds of diesel fuel. You could buy the diesel fuel in which there was a tax for the highway system in Australia, which was expensive. And then you could buy cheaper diesel for your farm equipment, which you shouldn't pay any road tax on your farm equipment because it's all off road. So the Land Cruiser had 2 tanks, so you could have 1 tank for driving off-road with the untaxed fuel and 1 tank for driving on-road with the taxed fuel.
So I grew up in a rural area, and now that you say that, I'm thinking about the gas pumps that were said for farm use only.
Right.
And I'm sure it's a similar situation.
I'll wager it's exactly the similar situation. And woe betide the one who apparently some people pointed this out, I think on Reddit. I think that's where, when I did the AMA and I put up a picture of the cruiser, I think that's where I got that info. They said you get a hefty fine if they find you running your car on the untaxed fuel.
I'm sure.
And they apparently they had a way to tell. So I've got 2 tanks. It's like 28 gallons of fuel.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, I'm not worried about running out of fuel, but I do have extra jerry cans of water and fuel, and I'll have my camping equipment with me.
Yeah.
I've got my AAA card.
So are you going to actually camp during the shoot, or are you going to go to a hotel?
I am. Yeah.
Is this the first time you've done this?
No, I've camped on our sites before.
Okay.
It's usually we're on these private lands or quiet places that you normally wouldn't necessarily go to, and you wake up with the sun. So I'm always going to beat my crew to the location, and it's lovely to be alone and quiet.
In the desert, especially, is amazing.
I have never done desert camping.
Oh, it's fun. Check your boots in the morning.
Yeah.
Take some photos.
Always check your boots.
Yeah. Oh, here, I want to show you something. Speaking of checking boots.
Are you going to tell us what? So people have asked about these for years.
People have asked about my Blundstones.
About your shoes, yeah.
Okay, so whoops. So yeah, I've been wearing Blundstones. That's what these are, steel tip Blundstone boots.
Slip-ons.
What's that?
Slip-ons.
Slip-ons, and they're the lightest steel-toed that anybody makes. They're fabulous. They've been protecting me almost through the entire run of MythBusters. And I have upstairs, I think, 6 pairs that have been
worn through?
retired. Yeah.
Wow.
I want to show you what happened to these.
Whoa.
How in the hell did you?
I have no idea. I just looked at these yesterday and I thought, oh, I guess it's time to retire these puppies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're listening to the audio version, one of them looks just fine, and then the other one has like a cigarette pack sized hole in the heel, where I assume there was an air cushion or something before, right?
So I have one last pair of blunts. Last time I bought 5 pairs about 3.5 years ago. That's about the periodicity at which I wear them out. And usually I wear the toe off and you see the steel underneath, and that's when they're no longer waterproof. And when they're no longer waterproof, that's when I retire them. I haven't been around water, but up in Oregon, it was real hot, and I think I just burned through the bottom.
Wow.
So these get retired today, and I pull out a brand new pair.
Have you thought about getting them resold? Are they resolable, or are they vulcanized on there to the point that you can't
It's a good question. I don't know. I haven't thought about having. I like the artifacts of the equipment that I've used on MythBusters. So I've got 6 cowboy hats that I've used over the years, and 5 or 6 pairs of shoes.
There's a word for this, Adam.
Hoarding?
Maybe. Might be time to talk to someone.
One of my hats and one of my pairs of Blundstones is on a national tour with a museum show. I could donate these to charity.
There you go.
Let's figure out a charity. I'll donate a hat and a pair of boots to charity.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's as good a place as any to wrap it up. Norm, you're going on a bit. Where else are you going on your road
Going
trip?
to Canada, going to Banff.
Oh, really?
Banff, yes.
You're driving across to Banff?
Yes. Going to one day to Portland, then to Vancouver a couple days, family vacation, then going to Banff for a wedding.
Amazing.
And then driving back by way of Salt Lake City.
Hold on, you're going with your parents?
Yes.
So,
oh, wow.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you.
You're in the same car?
In the same car.
You're crazy, Norm.
I know.
That's
I used to
insane.
do it all the time, too.
Listen, I did this. The publishing company that we worked for before this furloughed everybody for 2 weeks when the ad market was especially bad.
Yeah.
And as a result, I had an unexpectedly large amount of time off that summer. So my parents flew out to Vegas. We flew out and met them. And then we drove up through the Eastern Sierras, Gina and my mom and dad and I, up through the Eastern Sierras and up to Tahoe and all these places we'd never been with them before. And it was challenging from a personal level, but I absolutely cherish it, and I would love to do it again.
Wow.
Because it's something that, as an adult, you don't get to spend that much time with your parents. And the thing that Gina and I found is that when we were in the context of a road trip, a lot of the stuff that stresses us out when we visit them or when they visit us didn't matter. Because if we didn't want to eat the same things as them one day, or if everybody was getting kind of antsy, then we would just do our own thing for a day. We'd stop where we were, do our own thing for a day, and then everybody would be cool when we got back that night. So enjoy yourself. Have fun, man.
Donica
Well planned.
coming as well?
Oh, yeah.
You won't get
That
to
is-
have.
I have a lot of books and comic books and podcasts coming up.
Man.
Are you going to sit in the back and just say, "Are we there yet?" for 40 hours?
No.
I would get Digital Derby and play it the whole time.
You know, road trips. I learned how to play a harmonica on a road trip once.
Oh my God, you were not alone.
No, my parents were with
That
me.
is an awful thing
I
to
know,
do
it
to
was-
people.
Well, they're the one who bought the Klutz harmonica book. If you're talking about ways you learn
yeah,
things.
that's a good one. That's a good one.
Are you driving or are they driving? TBD.
TBD.
What?
As of right now.
So, which one of your parents? Like
My dad would drive.
Your dad drives.
Yeah.
In my family, my wife drives.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? I've been professionally trained, but she doesn't love my driving, and my wife is an excellent driver, so she does most of the driving in our family.
We split. We're pretty even. Usually, it depends on who drove last. So if it's the car with the car seat, it's usually Gina. If it's the other car, it's usually me.
Do you think your dad will let you drive?
He'll want me to drive. At some
He'll
point.
want you to drive.
We had to have that. When we went on the Eastern Sierras trip, we had to have that conversation. Well, because Dad wanted to look at stuff and what stuff he hadn't been able to see before because he'd never been out here. And like Gina and I've driven to Tahoe a ton. So
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm staying at the Kennedy School tonight. You've heard of this? The
No.
McKinnons? I forget. It's a hotel that's used to be an old elementary school, I want to say.
Oh.
So you stay in classrooms with a chalkboard and
Oh,
everything.
wow.
is it like bunks?
No, it's they're nice hotels.
They just moved the desks over to the side. They put a tarp in the middle.
There's redone old schools.
I went to a camp that used to be an old school, but it was haunted.
Yeah,
There
in
were,
Portland.
there were no ghosts.
That's interesting that we all three are aficionados of the road trip.
Everybody likes road trips are
So-
great.
It's just the other thing I will tell you is the trip to LA. I've done it in the middle of the night. That's actually my preferred way to do it. So when I head to the desert, I'm going to leave San Francisco at probably about 4 a.m. So I get most of my driving done out of the heat of the day.
Well, there's something amazing about being there driving east when the sun comes up. When we used to drive, we used to drive to Vegas for CES every year.
Yeah.
And like that, we would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, start driving, and then we'd get there just about the time the sun went down in Vegas.
Yeah.
And there's nothing better than coming over that last hill and seeing like the nightmare for your next 7 days lit up, fully ready to go.
Totally.
And then going and get some amazing Thai food.
And you'll get this when you come into Seattle. We came into Seattle on our road trip, and there's literally like a turn in the road, and then Seattle is ahead of you, and it's totally beautiful.
What are your all's favorite road trip movies? Because this is
Planes, trains, and automobiles, man.
I got to go with Tommy Boy probably.
Wow, from the medium to the low.
Home
Planes,
Alone
trains,
Hey, that is a fine film, sir.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a masterpiece.
I hadn't seen that until recently, and it is a lovely film.
Totally amazing. Midnight Run,
I've never seen that.
directed by Marty Brest, written by Gallo. It stars Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin.
Really?
Does Vanishing Point count?
Vanishing Point.
Vanishing Point is not a good movie, but it had some lovely
As a road
stunts.
trip?
Hold on just a second.
Yeah.
The Midnight Run, if you have not seen it, it is a fantastic movie. It is a comedy with some really great moments in it, really worth seeing.
Charles Grodin and Robert De Niro's. You had me at that.
I mean, Charles Grodin makes Robert De Niro so insane over the course of this movie. He drives him so freaking crazy. It's hilarious.
perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's great.
Norm,
I don't know.
Blues Brothers is always a good
Blues
choice.
Brothers, never not bad. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, not quite as awesome as the book, although that is the all-time greatest road trip book.
I think that Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. We rewatched that recently when we were playing board games. That movie holds up much better than I expected it
Does
to.
it?
Yeah.
All right, I have to watch
It's
it again.
really,
I had a lot
really
of
lovely.
expectations on it. I've read everything Hunter Thompson wrote twice, so I was a little bit maybe snobby.
There's an amazing full-voiced cast, unabridged version of Fear and Loathing. I don't even know if you can still get it, but it has like
Audiobook,
a million cameos of the reading of the book.
Oh, wow.
And it's all like it's voice, so every character is a different actor.
Oh, that's great.
And it's like everybody from Johnny Depp all the way down to like Jimmy Buffett.
Oh,
plays
I'll
the
also
cop.
for road trip, I'll go American Gods by Neil Gaiman.
That's a lovely book too.
A terrific road trip.
Yeah. About to be turned into a.
About to be turned into an
Series?
HBO
Yeah.
series. Yeah, that's actually that's a great idea. I'm really excited about it, and Neil's writing some of the episodes.
I'm super stoked. Like that, it is probably my favorite book of the last decade. So
It's
of the first decade of the 21st.
Neil,
century.
Neil's a friend, and I've interviewed him a couple times on stage. He said Shadow is the hardest character he's ever had to
I
write.
can't even imagine. Yeah. Okay, that's a good place to wrap it up. We'll see you guys next week. The promo
So abrupt.
is, you know me, I just pull the plug. The promo is still running, so you have a couple more days left to get the poster. If you want to get Adam's poster that he drew, his ILM toolboxes are on these cool scissor lifts, and it's basically you listened to our F Tools initiative a few weeks ago. It's basically the predecessor of that. These
The
toolboxes.
F drawers. Yes.
Sorry. F Tools is a completely different podcast. We put that one in the
Not
vault.
really my thing.
Yeah. See you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.